Hey everybody, welcome back!
My parents gave me the Crumbling family house and gifted my sister a luxury condo. I spent 3 years renovating, nights, weekends, every dollar I had. When Mom saw it finished, she smiled coldly. We're transferring it to your sister. You have 48 hours. 2 days later, my sister arrived with moving boxes. Her smile faded when she saw. My parents gave me the collapsing family house and handed my sister a luxury condo in the same week. That should tell you everything. The house had been sitting empty for years at the edge of town. The roof sagged in the middle. The porch steps were soft from rot. When it rained, water slid down the living room walls like the place was crying. My dad called it an opportunity. My mom said it would build character. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Emily, got a 2-bedroom condo downtown with a view of the river and a doorman who knew her name by the second week. I was 29 at the time. I worked full-time at a medical billing office and picked up freelance bookkeeping on weekends. I did not have savings to spare. But when my parents transferred the old house to me, I told myself this was finally my shot to prove I wasn't the disappointment they always hinted I was. Growing up, Emily was the easy one. Straight as cheer squad, engagement ring by 24. I was the one who switched majors twice and moved back home after a breakup. It did not matter that I eventually finished school and found steady work. In their eyes, I was always catching up. The house felt like a test I had to pass. The first night I stayed there, I slept on a mattress on the floor with a bucket catching drips from the ceiling. I remember staring at the cracked plaster and thinking, I can fix this. I will fix this. Not just the house. For 3 years I lived in dust and noise. I learned how to install drywall from YouTube videos at midnight. I saved every bonus check for new windows. I skipped vacations. I said no to dinners out. My friends stopped inviting me to things because I always had an excuse. My parents visited maybe 4 times during those years. Each time my mom would walk through slowly, pointing out flaws. The cabinets are slightly uneven. The paint color is bold. Are you sure this is worth it, Linda? Emily came once. She stood in the gutted kitchen and asked if I ever wished I had just sold it as is. I told her no. I meant it. By the end of the 3rd year, the place was unrecognizable. I had restored the original hardwood floors. The kitchen had custom cabinets I built myself with a contractor friend guiding me. The backyard had a deck with string lights and a small garden along the fence. It was not a mansion, but it was warm and solid and finally mine. I invited my parents over for dinner to see it finished. Mom walked in, looked around, and smiled in a way that made my stomach drop. This is nice, she said. You did more than we expected. Dad cleared his throat and sat at the dining table I had refinished by hand. We had been talking, he said. About the house. Something about the way he said it made the room feel smaller. Mom folded her hands on the table. We think it would be better for the family if the house goes to Emily. She and Jason are planning for kids. They need the space more than you do. I honestly thought she was joking. I waited for the punchline. We are transferring it to her, she said. You will need to vacate within 48 hours so we can handle the paperwork cleanly. I reminded her the deed was in my name. Dad nodded. Yes, temporarily. We structured it that way for tax reasons. It has always been understood that this was a family asset. Understood by who? Mom looked at me like I was being dramatic. Do not make this harder than it needs to be, Linda. 3 years. Every dollar I had. Every weekend. I did not cry in front of them. I just sat there staring at the walls I had painted, the floors I had sanded, the light fixtures I had installed one by one. 2 days later, Emily pulled into the driveway with a rental truck and a stack of moving boxes in the back seat of her SUV. She stepped out smiling like she had just won something. Her smile faded the second she saw what was parked along the curb in front of my house. Her smile faded the second she saw the black SUV parked along the curb. It wasn't just the car. It was the couple standing on the sidewalk staring at my house like it was a museum piece. The woman wore sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. The man had that quiet, confident look of someone who doesn't ask the price of things. They weren't there by accident. The day after my parents gave me 48 hours, I did something I had never done before. I called a real estate agent I knew casually from my bookkeeping job. His name is Marcus. I told him I needed the house listed immediately. No staging. No open house schedule. Just serious buyers. He came that afternoon, walked through each room slowly, then looked at me and said, if this hits the right market, it will move fast. Apparently, the right market was faster than I expected. Emily walked up the driveway, boxes still in her arms. What is going on? I told her I was selling. She laughed like I had said something ridiculous. You cannot. Mom and Dad already handled everything. Handled what exactly? She glanced at the couple by the curb. They started walking up toward us, admiring the new cedar deck and the landscaping I had spent 2 summers building. The woman introduced herself as Vanessa. Her husband, Robert, shook my hand and asked if I was the owner. Yes, I said. I am. Emily stepped in. Qley, this is our family house. Robert looked between us calmly. The listing says it is privately owned. Marcus pulled into the driveway right on time. He carried a folder and walked straight up to me. We have an offer, he said. All cash. Emily stopped smiling entirely. Vanessa did not bother pretending to negotiate. 500,000, she said. We can close in 10 days. No contingencies. I had bought the house for almost nothing because it was considered unlivable. Even after renovations, comparable homes in the area were going for maybe 400 at best. I had expected to list at 420 and hope. 500. Emily set her box down on the driveway. Mom said you were moving out today. I said. Just not the way she thought. Marcus handed me the preliminary paperwork. I skimmed the first page and felt something steady settle in my chest. The deed was fully in my name. No shared ownership. No trust. No hidden clause. My parents had assumed I would never question them. Emily stepped aside and called Mom. I could hear her whispering urgently. Then she handed me the phone. Mom did not bother with small talk. You are embarrassing us. How? By creating a scene. We told Emily she could move in this weekend. I told you I would not be here in 48 hours. Silence. You would really sell it out from under your own sister. I built this house back to life. Not her. Not you. Dad's voice came on the line next. Think carefully, Linda. This is family. Exactly. Vanessa and Robert were still standing there, patient, watching the exchange without pretending not to. I looked at Emily. For the first time in my life, she did not look confident. She looked unsure. Almost scared. If you do this, she said, do not expect us to help you later. Help me with what? She did not answer. I signed the offer that afternoon. The moving boxes went back into her SUV. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was the one who had options. The part one did not expect was how fast my parents changed their tone once the sale became real. By the next morning, Mom was calling me every hour. Not to apologize. To negotiate. We should discuss how to divide this properly, she said. It was a family property after all. Divide what? The profit. Emily gave up her claim so you could sell. That is worth something. I almost laughed. Emily never had a claim. Dad texted me a spreadsheet that afternoon. He had calculated what he called a fair distribution. According to him, I would keep 150,000 for my effort. The remaining 350,000 would be split between them and Emily to keep things balanced. 3 years of work reduced to a line item labeled renovation labor estimate. I did not respond. Marcus handled the closing quickly. Vanessa and Robert wired the full amount without hesitation. When I saw the number in my bank account, I had to sit down. It felt unreal. Not because of the money, but because it meant I was finally out from under them. Or so I thought. 2 days after closing, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. I had moved into a short-term rental while I figured out my next step. She walked in, looked around at the small space and shook her head. You are being impulsive, she said. We can fix this. Just transfer Emily 200,000. That would smooth everything over. Why 200? Because that is what a comparable condo would cost if she upgrades. I stared at her. You already gave her a luxury condo. She folded her arms. That was a gift. This is about fairness. Here is the unexpected part. Emily called me that night. Not to demand money. Not to argue. She asked to meet. We sat at a coffee shop halfway between our places. She looked tired. Not angry. Just tired. Did you know Mom and Dad refinanced their house last year, she asked. Well, they used it to help Jason invest in his friend's startup. It failed. They are underwater. I did not know what to say. They were counting on your house to cover it, she said. That is why they pushed so hard. So this was never about space for future kids. She shook her head. It was about bailing them out without telling you the truth. For a second, I felt something close to guilt. Then I remembered the bucket catching rainwater. The weekends alone. The cold smile. Emily wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. They are furious. They think you owe them. She hesitated. Well, I do not. That was the second unexpected thing. For the first time, she was not automatically on their side. But the peace did not last long. The next week, Dad left me a voicemail saying they were considering legal action. He claimed the property transfer had been a misunderstanding and that they had evidence the house was meant to remain a shared family asset. Marcus reviewed everything. There was nothing they could do. Still, the threats kept coming. Emails. Messages. Extended relatives suddenly calling to tell me I had broken my parents' hearts. I could have written a check and ended it. Instead, I did something else. I started looking at houses. And not the kind they thought I deserved. I did not tell anyone I was house hunting. Not my parents. Not my extended family. Not even Emily. I wanted something modest but solid. Not a project. Not a rescue mission. Just a place that was already standing on its own. After a week of searching, I found it. A 3-bedroom craftsman-style house about 40 minutes outside the city. Quiet street. Big maple tree in the front yard. Recently updated roof and plumbing. Nothing flashy, but it felt steady. The price was $200,000. I could have bought something bigger. Something that screamed success. Instead, I paid cash and kept the rest invested. For once, I was thinking long-term. Closing took 3 weeks. During that time, my parents escalated. Dad sent a formal letter drafted by some attorney friend, hinting at family contribution disputes. It was mostly intimidation. Marcus connected me with a real lawyer who shut it down with one response. Then came the emotional angle. Mom texted me photos of old family holidays in the original house. Thanksgiving dinners. Christmas mornings. She wrote, "You sold our memories." I did not reply. The day I moved into my new place, I rented a small moving truck and handled most of it myself. A couple of co-workers came to help with furniture. It was simple. No drama. No speeches. But drama showed up anyway. As I was unloading the last box, a familiar SUV slowed at the end of the street. My parents' car. Behind them, Emily's. They did not get out at first. They just sat there staring at the house like they were trying to calculate something. Eventually, Mom stepped out. She looked at the exterior, then at me. "You already bought something," she said. "Yes." "With cash?" "Yes." Dad walked around the front yard slowly. $200,000, he muttered after checking the online listing on his phone. "You still have 300 left." There was not congratulations, not relief that I had landed on my feet. Emily stayed near the sidewalk. She actually smiled when she saw the inside through the open door. "It is nice," she said quietly. "Fits you." Mom ignored her. "We need to talk about a structured solution," she said. "Alone. Temporary. Just until we recover." "Recover from what?" Dad answered. "From mistakes. Families help each other." I looked at the house behind me. The porch light I did not have to install. The roof that did not leak. The walls that did not need saving. For 3 years I had tried to earn their approval. Now they were asking to borrow my stability. "No," I said. Mom blinked like she had misheard. "We are not asking for a gift," she said. "Just support." "No." Dad's jaw tightened. "After everything we have done for you." That line used to work on me. This time it did not. They stood there for another minute waiting for me to reconsider. I did not. Eventually they got back into the car. Emily lingered. "I am glad you did not cave," she said. They would have kept asking. As they drove away, I realized something strange. They were not looking at me with disappointment anymore. They were looking at me like I was unpredictable. And that unsettled them more than failure ever did. What I did not know yet was how far they were willing to go once they realized I was serious about keeping every dollar. I thought saying no once would be enough. It was not. Over the next 2 months, the requests came in waves. At first it was framed as a short-term loan. Then it became an investment opportunity. Then it shifted into guilt. Dad sent me a breakdown of their debts. Credit cards. The failed startup loan. Second mortgage I never knew existed. The total made my stomach drop. "You are in a position to fix this overnight," he wrote. I did not respond. Then my Aunt Carol called. She said the family was worried about how distant I had become. She mentioned how stressed my parents were. She casually added that $500,000 can change people. I realized something. They truly believed the money was communal. That my effort had been a temporary inconvenience on the way to their solution. Emily surprised me again. She started pushing back on them directly. She told me later that Mom had suggested Emily ask me for money instead, thinking I would not refuse her. Emily told her no. That created a new problem. Now I was not just selfish. I was influencing her. One Sunday afternoon they all showed up at my house without warning. Mom, Dad, and Emily. This time they came inside. Dad walked through my living room and kitchen like he was inspecting an asset. Mom sat at my dining table and placed a folder in front of me. "We spoke to a financial advisor," she said. "If you contribute $250,000, we can consolidate everything. It protects the family's reputation." "Reputation with who?" She did not answer. I opened the folder. It was a repayment plan. 10 years. Low interest. Based entirely on trust. "You want me to risk half of what I have left," I said, "so you can fix decisions I was never part of." Dad leaned back. "We supported you when you moved home after college." "For 8 months," I said. "And I paid rent." Mom's voice softened. "Families do not keep score." That almost made me laugh. I stood up and slid the folder back to her. "I am not your emergency fund." Silence. Dad's face changed. Not angry. Not pleading. Something colder. "If you do not help us, do not expect us to help you when things go wrong." That used to terrify me. Now it sounded like freedom. Emily finally spoke. Maybe we should stop treating Linda like a backup plan. Mom looked at her like she had crossed a line. We left shortly after. That night I changed my phone settings. I filtered their calls. I stopped answering immediately. I created space. They kept trying for weeks. Smaller requests. Could you at least cover the interest payment this month? Could you co-sign something? Could you speak to your bank? I said no. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just no. Eventually something shifted. The calls slowed. The messages became shorter. And then for the first time in my life my parents asked me a different kind of question. Dad texted me one evening. If you were in our position, what would you do? Not what will you give us? What would you do? That was new. I stared at the message for a long time before answering. Because for the first time they were not demanding. They were listening. Dad's text sat on my screen for almost an hour. If you were in our position, what would you do? 3 months earlier, that message would have been followed by a request for money. This time there was nothing attached to it. No spreadsheet. No guilt. I replied with one sentence. I would sell the condo and downsize before asking my daughter to clean up my mistakes. He did not answer that night. 2 days later, Emily called me. Mom and Dad had listed her condo. I thought she was joking. They actually agreed, she said. We all talked. It makes more sense than borrowing from you. Apparently, something about me refusing over and over had forced them to look at the math instead of my bank account. The condo sold within a month. Not for as much as they originally paid, but enough to wipe out most of the debt when combined with refinancing their own home properly this time. They had to cut back. No more expensive vacations. No more risky investments through Jason's friends. Jason took a regular job. Life became normal. A few weeks later, my parents invited me over for dinner. I almost declined. Old habits. But I went. The house looked the same. Maybe a little quieter. Mom did not bring up money. Dad did not mention fairness. We ate, talked about small things, and for once I was not waiting for the hidden agenda. After dinner, Dad asked how I chose my new place. Not in a critical way. In a curious way. I explained why I paid cash. Why I invested the rest instead of upgrading. How stability mattered more to me than showing success. He nodded slowly. That makes sense. Mom asked how I managed the renovation budget so tightly before the sale. I told her about tracking every expense, negotiating materials, doing labor myself. She said, you were always more disciplined than we gave you credit for. It was not a dramatic apology, but it was real. Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. They started asking me for advice. Not for money. For advice. Dad called about retirement planning. Mom asked about refinancing options. Emily wanted help building a savings strategy now that she and Jason were renting temporarily. And every single time I helped them. I sent spreadsheets. I explained interest rates. I recommended conservative choices. I never wrote a check. They never asked again. One afternoon, I was sitting on my own porch under the maple tree when my parents pulled into the driveway. No tension this time. Mom looked around at the yard and said, you built something solid for yourself. Not just the house. He meant everything. For most of my life, I thought I needed to prove I was not the failure. It turns out the only thing I needed to prove was that I would not let them define my worth or spend my future. They never received a single dollar from me. But they did start respecting me. And somehow that felt more valuable than the 500,000 ever did. 500,000 ever did. 500,000 ever did.
Genuinely remorseful and kept apologizing. But I couldn't shake that feeling of betrayal. Like, not only was he doing all of this, like, on your wedding day, like, was he really gonna go and, like, look at his phone and, like, text this other woman on your wedding day? He basically thinks your feelings are a joke. He admitted that he had doubts, but he insisted that he loved me and wanted to make our marriage work. I told him I needed time to think, and since then I've been staying with a close friend while I sort through my emotions. Listen, it is okay to have doubts about your relationship. Lots of people have doubts. Lots of people get pre-wedding jitters. They get scared being with one person, but you don't cheat. You just don't. Now I'm torn. Did I overreact by leaving on our wedding day? Should I have confronted him then and there, or did I do the right thing by taking a step back to gather my thoughts? I feel like you were actually quite considerate of his feelings and everybody else at the party by just like quietly leaving. There are a lot of people out there that would raise hell when they saw that. My goodness. I feel guilty for leaving in such a dramatic way. You didn't though. Like, you were not dramatic at all. Like, I feel like you were quite poised in how you handled this. But I also feel justified in needing time to process such a huge revelation. Am I the a-hole for leaving my husband on our wedding day? Honestly, no. No, you're not. Like, I'm sorry that it had to happen on your wedding day. That really sucks. It sucks that he couldn't figure his shit out before and you guys could have broken up, or, you know, he could have been sure about you before you guys got married. I just feel like all of this could have been avoided. And just because you made the decision to leave on the wedding day, yes, but like you wouldn't have done that if you didn't encounter, like, the conversation is one thing, the cheating is another thing. It's both things that you discovered one after the other on your wedding day. If anybody doubts you, just send out a text blast. Send out a text blast so everybody knows exactly what happened. I still can't believe that some people are saying that you should like work on the relationship. Like, he just shows no respect to you whatsoever.
Huh?
Snoo Advice said, get an annulment and an STD panel, that's all. Yep. This, and sue him for the cost of the wedding. Literally, like, why would you go through that? Weddings are so expensive. They are so time consuming for everyone else involved as well. Please, for the love of God, please, if you